We
who's
thank
sending the
you,
letter to
God, to
them?
know that we
What could
have a
we learn
sanctuary in
from
heaven.
those two
We
questions?
thank you, God, to know that we have God, the ancient of days,
We
our
question
Father. We thank you,
Pastor
God,
Black.
to know that we have a
For
mercy.
me, well, we
Oh God,
know
we come to you this
there are two
morning,
tiers in
prostrate in
answering this question in
affliction,
terms of who the
lifting
church
our
is being
hands
addressed
this
to,
morning,
right? So we
receiving of
know the
you,
first tier
keep
is
us calling
that
upon your
Smyrna is
name,
a literal place, a
God,
literal
in the need,
church.
God,
It was
Lord,
about
we are asking
40
you, oh
miles
God,
from Ephesus, the previous church. And so we see the proximity and the closeness to that where they would second
Touch
church
us
that
so we are
come
depending
up,
on
but
you
also
this
then we have
morning. Remember those, oh God, who
also
are
Ish.
sick, Lord.
It was about
Strengthen them,
40 miles
we bring them
from
before you this morning.
Ephesus,
We are
the
asking, Lord, that
previous
you will
church.
touch them,
And so we
encourage
see
them, Lord.
the proximity and the
Support
closeness
our
to
families,
that
Lord,
where
because
they
Lord, we are
would
sick. Touch
second
us so we are
children come
depending
up,
on
but
you
also
this
then we have
morning.
some
Remember
rapid
those,
growth.
oh God, who
Also,
are
Ish,
sick, Lord.
it was about 40 miles
Bring them
from
before you this morning.
Ephesus,
We are
the
asking, Lord, that
previous
you will
church.
touch them, Lord.
So
We are
we
praying,
see
Lord.
the church history, proximity,
We are
and the
asking for
closeness
our
to
families
that
this morning.
where they would second
Touch us so we are
children come
depending
up,
on
but
you
also
this
then we have
morning.
some
Remember
rapid
those,
growth.
oh God, who
Also,
are
For us, we had a lot with the historical aspect of it. So we this church in but I don't want to go. I don't want to go too more in depth in terms of like the historical aspect because the lesson itself is going to bring that out when we go into it. But you can see that this church was existing in a time and period where they were going through some hardships, and based on the previous church, Ephesus was a fluent church. They were doing well in terms of they didn't have concern real hardships, persecution. They were being under threat by the emperors at the time, trying to really put a stamp on Christianity. And so this was going to a church that was existing at a time that the world that they lived in wasn't favorable towards them. And so the lesson is going to cover more about how they existed, all of this pressures around them, and then what we can learn from that as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I know that we're identifying some of the issues, and I believe
but
that both
Lord, have
yourself and
mercy upon the
Pastor
church.
Burrows would have
Have
identified
mercy
that there's
upon
persecution
our
going on.
globe, Jesus.
And there's an
Have
interesting verse
mercy.
here where Jesus says that I know your afflictions, this is verse 9, I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. And the persecution that the church was going through took on different forms, not only death or imprisonment, which the text talks about, but they were also being marginalized economically. And in an affluent city like Smyrna, the Christians were the poorest class of people. And so we saw that they were dealing with different levels of alienation. They were dealing with different types of challenges. Perhaps you may see some other issues that I didn't bring out just now, something that will help us later on as we get into applying the main message and the applications of the text.
Mm-hmm. about it.
Okay, and remember everyone, you can write your comments or questions in the chat. We'll be able to get to them. If you look at the bottom of your mobile device, you'll see tabs that says participants. If you select that, that's going to open up a drop down menu that's going to show you who all is here, and then you're going to see another option that says chat. Once you select that, you can type in your text, you can text in your comment or your question, and we'll be able to get that as a part of our discussion here tonight. What issues does this letter address? And so you mentioned, and like I had previously highlighted, it says, if you look at verse 9, it says, I know your works, it says, I know your tribulation and poverty, and I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. The crisis that they were going through at this point in time was their world that they lived in didn't favor the Christians, didn't favor Christianity, and so they felt immense pressure and scrutiny by the systems, and literally the governmental systems had policies and laws in place that did not favor those who followed after Christ. And I think we could relate to that in some ways, where there are some things that we feel may happen around us in our world today, on our jobs, or wherever, at schools, or in different places where we don't feel as if we have the upper ground because we are Christian. It's like we're fighting, we're swimming upstream, as it were, so to speak, in some regards, because those who don't have a problem worshiping on Sabbath, who don't have a problem working on Sabbath, or those who don't have a problem engaging in the sale of certain things or practicing certain things, they seem to hold on, they move faster on the totem pole. It was a pressures that was on this church, that they existed in a world that didn't seem favorable to them. And here it is, Jesus, because again, these words written in red, Jesus is writing, and he's sending this message to them to say, hey, I know what you're going through. I don't want to jump ahead and guessing. I think that's always important. That Jesus, no matter where we find ourselves, Jesus knows what we go. That's not like a song. Jesus knows what I'm going through. Hey, but anyway,
just to add on the block. If you notice in verse 9, it says, I know your suffering and your poverty, and how you are blasphemed and slandered by those who say they are Jews and are not. And if we could see, the persecution even came within the church. People who profess to be Christians, but even those who are truly being faithful to God, we're being persecuted on the inside. So not only did the pressure come from the outside in terms of community and government, but it also came within the church. And boy, I think they were truly under, and talk about jumping from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, man. Pastor Sims and Pastor Moss, sounds like you all were ready to preach just now. And I was getting excited myself. But we have to continue on, and the next question is looking at what is the main message of this text? What's the main message of Revelation chapter 2, verses 8 to 11? I believe Pastor Sims was starting to push in the direction that Jesus knows. And how is it that Jesus knows what we're going through? How can we connect Jesus' knowledge to our present experiences when we're going through difficult times?
Hey, Pastor Block, before Pastor Burrows go, I just want to back up a little bit. So comments came in. I just want to highlight in case those people who aren't able to see them. The Allen family said that this church in Smyrna, they were rich in grace, patient. Because remember he said, we are rich. So the Allen family said they were rich in grace.
Gives us a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of self-worth. It makes us believe that we are independent, holding a home. a car.